In A Song of Ice and Fire, Valyrian steel is the rare and supernaturally strong metal from which many of the famed swords of the story are forged. It is described as dark as smoke, with a rippled pattern from the thousands of times it has been folded. The secret of forging new Valyrian steel has been lost, with only the smiths of Qohor able to rework the metal at all. The rippled pattern and the lost art of production are reminiscent of Damascus steel. Named after one of the main Arab cities where the metal was shaped into weapons, the steel itself was actually forged in southern India, and known there as Wootz Steel. Like Valyrian steel, Wootz Steel was much harder and yet more flexible than any other medieval steel. Their precise art was lost as India was colonized by the British and other European empires, though modern methods can produce equivalent kinds of steel. In A Song of Ice and Fire, the secret of Valyrian steel was lost along with the rest of Valyria in the Doom, but I believe enough clues have been left in the story to work out how it was made. Annals from Asshai say that Valyrians didn't discover the secret of dragon taming by themselves, but were taught the secret by an even earlier people, presumably people close to or known by the Asshai. Perhaps the same is true of the secret of Valyrian steel, just as the secret of Damascus steel didn't really come from Damascus, but from further east. Annals from the Night's Watch say the last hero wielded a sword of Dragonsteel, which Jon and Sam immediately associate with Valyrian steel, even though the Valyrian freehold did not yet exist at the time of the Long Night. Dragonsteel might have been the earlier name for what would become known as Valyrian steel once the Valyrians had learned how to make it. Steel is iron fortified with carbon. The Tamils used wood chippings to provide the carbon in Wootz Steel. As the steel was constantly folded and reheated, some of the wood ash would get trapped in the layers, creating a dark rippled effect. What could be the carbon used in Valyrian or dragon steel? Some believe that dragon glass is added, as both are shown killing the others, or White Walkers, in the Game of Thrones TV show. But obsidian would only make the iron more brittle where it joined at all. It would surely be easier just to use dragon glass in separate weapons. Perhaps the carbon instead comes from the remains of a blood sacrifice. Such sacrifices are certainly implicated in the World Book by Maester Pol, who learned that Qohoric smiths sacrificed slaves as young as infants to try and match Valyrian steelmaking. Though this doesn't necessarily mean their remains were added to the steel, and there is a simpler answer that is more comparable with Wootz Steel. I think the carbon layers in Dragonsteel are from wood chippings of the trees that produce Shade of the Evening, what I called the Shadewood trees in my last video comparing them to the Weirwoods. We see that Shade of the Evening played some role in the magic the Undying used to try to drain the life force out of Daenerys. Their grounds full of shadewood trees are said to drink the morning sun by Jogo. Almost identical language is used by Turbo Mott while trying to tint Valyrian steel red. Always the colour would darken, as if the blade was drinking the sun from it. In my last video, I argued for a past connection between shadewood trees, the Shadowlands, and shadow binding, the magic that Mirri Maz Duur probably used to prolong the comatose life of Khal Drogo at the cost of the life of Daenerys' baby Rhaego. I believe that shadewood has the power to absorb some or all of the life force of a sacrificed person and hold it. When folded into Dragonsteel, the shadewood contains the life force within the steel, giving it a magical strength and vitality. Oathkeeper is described as feeling alive even in the hands of Tyrion, and perhaps it is. So, how is someone's life force absorbed into Dragonsteel? I suspect we've already been told the exact method in the Legend of Azor Ahai. The third time with a heavy heart, for he knew beforehand what he must do to finish the blade, Azor Ahai worked for 100 days and nights until it was finished. This time he called for his wife, Nissa Nissa, and asked her to bare her breast. He drove his sword into her living heart, her soul combining with the steel of the sword, creating Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes. The Azor Ahai myth represents many different things, just as almost everything Martin writes has multiple layers of illusion. But I think it also provides the literal recipe for Dragonsteel, later taught to the Valyrians, accepting only the key ingredient of shadewood. Even if the last hero and Azor Ahai were different people, they were probably both wielding these Dragonsteel swords. And Dragonsteel may well have been invented specifically to fight the others, as each legend implies, and the TV show makes plain. Dragonfire, or at least fire magic, could have been used to heat the steel, and it's tempting to imagine Valyria as a Flintstones-like land of small, useful dragons, lighting forges with their breath, while their bigger cousins are ridden into battle. But there is another sense in which the terms Dragonsteel and Valyrian steel might have been earned. The message of the Azor Ahai story is that lesser sacrifices weren't good enough. The final sacrifice was not only a human being, but Azor Ahai's own family. And if Azor Ahai behaved anything like the Valyrians, she might even have been his own blood. Perhaps the Dragon Lords of Azor Ahai's time, presumably during the fabled Great Empire of the Dawn, realized that only the fiery blood of dragon riders could create a real Dragonsteel sword. These silver-haired, purple-eyed characters have unusually robust health, especially considering their many generations of incest. And remember, Cahoric smiths only made efforts to match freehold steel. It is not said they succeeded, as their slave sacrifices probably lacked the blood of the dragon. In this sense, the terms Valyrian steel and Dragonsteel may be more literal than we realize, as the blades contain the spirits of past Valyrians and the early dragon riders. These sacrifices need not have been made of the lords and ladies themselves. The Dance of the Dragons showed that dragon seeds, the bastard children of dragon lords, can be good enough to bond with dragons. Perhaps they're also good enough to be made into Dragonsteel swords. It may well be that some of the swords called Valyrian are actually much older, just as their distinctive pale looks are found even in families with no known connection to the freehold, like House Dane of Starfall. All of the 3 A Song of Ice and Fire theories that I've made into videos so far are highly speculative, but I think they each represent the straightest line connecting all the clues available. Thank you all for watching, and stay safe.